My name is Melanie, and I am a principal recruitment consultant and podcast host at Evolution. I'm on the gaming team, and we focus on freelance recruitment within the gaming industry. I'm here with the lovely Maeva at Beyond Frames, which is a VR studio based in Stockholm. This series is called Game Changers. It's a podcast and YouTube series, and it's where we bring leaders in the gaming industry to have a one-on-one interview. And these are people who I have found them particularly interesting. I'm a recruiter, so I'm very curious when I see people's LinkedIns. So how did they get there? What are their experiences? What could we learn from their experiences? So yeah, I think that's everything. So if you'd like to introduce yourself, Maeva.
Of course. My name is Maeva Sponbergs. I work at Beyond Frames, and I'm the head of publishing and CMO for the company. Worked in the games industry for probably more than 20 years now, so it's been a long and winding road coming here. But on my everyday right now, I'm promoting VR games. I have a publishing team that I take care of, and we do a lot of marketing activities.
Oh, that's awesome. So my first question is, you have worked in, because I don't want to say in different areas because there must be a link, but I mean, back in the day, you were in sales, then you were executive assistant at some point, you have worked in PR, in general marketing, then you moved over to operations, been head of operations, COO, now you're CMO. So my first question, just looking at that list, is what is the common thread that links all of those roles in some way?
I think a passion for games is the one common thread. I usually say I'm of the 8-bit era, so started with Nintendo and NES and the equivalent Sega consoles. I was fighting it out with the other boys in the yard, arguing that Mario's dominance over Sonic. I was queuing in line in the local retail shops to get on the demo unit before I had my own. So I've been a gamer at heart since a very young age. And I've been fortunate enough, I think, throughout my life to be in a position where I can actually get into the games industry. So I've had the fortune to kind of like dial in on games as the primary industry of my interest, but also utilize my tech kind of like interest. I'm a gadget geek. I love, picking up new phones, figuring out why I like them, and just feeling new tech is always a good lot of fun. And combining that into my games industry experience and actually trying to figure out what games are good for you and why are games good for people. And I think that kind of like took me on the journey. Again, I've been blessed to be able to try out many different things, which then also ladders up in your kind of like career of trying out many things and understanding many different things. Gives you perspective so you can work in different fields.
Okay. Do you remember what your first game was?
Oh, it was Mario, for sure.
Yeah.
Yes, Super Mario was my first one.
Okay. So do you, even to this day, do you have more of a loyalty to Nintendo over other people?
Yes, of course. Of course. I'm a little bit angry with the Switch prices right now, but otherwise, yeah, for sure.
You're currently the chief marketing officer, but your previous role was chief operational officer. Mm-hmm. It's quite unusual, at least in my experience, to see someone go from like one C-level to another C-level position. So I'm curious, other than that one is clearly marketing, I'm aware of that, but what are the other differences between those two roles, would you say?
I would say it depends on the company. The games industry is still young, which also means that different companies have different definitions of what a role actually entails. So a COO or a chief operating officer can work with anything and everything other than game development, basically, in the games industry. And then depending on the company, what expertise you have, that can entail different things. So a CEO can look after IT. It can look after legal, sometimes even finance. I didn't do that because we had a very strong CFO, several CFOs during my days as operating officer. But it can also entail marketing. So marketing can actually also ladder up to a COO role. So having experienced many different things within the games industry helps with operating role, because you have a greater understanding of what's everything else other than games development. You usually have a very strong creative director or producers in a games organization that looks after the games team. But then there's everything else around that as well. So it's more of keeping the lights on, making sure that rent is paid, that you have a place to actually stay. It can be negotiating for new contracts of offices, making sure that the AC units are okay. Today, we're much better with kind of like power management. We have really powerful computers usually in production. Back when I started, the displays weren't energy efficient enough. They generated massive amounts of heat. So, for example, ventilation was a big issue operationally for a game studio to be able to operate. So there's all of these nuances to game dev that actually files into one role usually, which is operations.
I did not realize that ventilation was something that you needed to think about. Yeah. But yeah, that does make a lot of sense. What made you go from being very marketing heavy to then operations?
I have a background as a project manager, if that makes sense. So my core competency, I would like to say, is project management, budget, time, kind of like keeping structure, making sure that everything ladders up to one goal. And that is very helpful whether you're working in marketing. Basically, any everyday task is helped by sufficient planning and budget considerations and everything else that comes into play. So I think the project manager in me is helpful for whatever role I've kind of like taken on. But then marketing has always been a part. I started in my in Swedish gymnasium, so high school, college-ish. I started out in media as my very specific part of it, in graphic design. And then when I moved on and went to business school, I studied for project management, but I did it at a marketing-centric school as well. Right, so we got everything from kind of like global economy, but also strategic and tactical marketing, and then laddering that up into project management, kind of like concepts and theory. So it's helped me greatly in everything that I've done afterwards.
Okay. And I think just on this part, my final question is, are there any major differences with marketing, because you're currently in a VR studio, are there any major differences between marketing for VR and then marketing for like PC console?
Yes and no. It's a difficult question. When you worked in marketing for over years in games, you kind of like see the baseline recipe is always the same to a sense. You have your PR efforts, you have your ad buys, you have your strategy in terms of reaching your audience. You have to define your audience and then find them and kind of like, where are they on the internet? Where are they in real life? How do we plug into that? What's my budget? What's my title? And how do I relate and balance all of those kind of like ingredients to the recipe that I have? But then VR is very specific in terms of how we can showcase the games. And that's really tough sometimes to really show a game with quality that engages people. So it was one of the things that I've learned very quickly. I launched my first game coming here within 10 weeks. And nobody had done anything. And I was almost alone in trying to get it going. I had a marketing manager to help me from the studio. But it was a lot of things to kind of like figure out. But I also learned very quickly, looking at the numbers as we were going, that it's not quite right. It's not quite what I expected, and we need to pivot, and we need to do it quite significantly. So it's very easy to translate a VR game as a mobile game if you look at it in an ad when you're scrolling. It's easy to kind of like misunderstand. So, for example, the very easy part that we do is, if you've seen an ad for a VR game, it's usually a person in headset doing this or touching something in a VR headset. We have to do that because we have to translate what platform we're actually trying to communicate to the user. So it's one of those small things that differs.
And I imagine that is a challenge because with like PC console or even mobile, what the person sees in the advert is what they would see if they play the game. For you guys, you can't do that because what you see in the advert is not actually what you would see in game because it's a VR 3D game.
Yes.
So that's actually something that I've not thought of, that must be quite challenging. So yeah, it does make sense that you would have someone with all of the gear on. You've done a lot of public speaking. Fairly recently, you spoke at GDC, Game Developers Conference. That's not a small gig. That's quite a big one. So what is advice you have for people who speak publicly or are looking to speak publicly? Equally, what advice do you follow? I'm interested to know that.
I think the advice that I can give is prepare. And also, if you have a certain period of time between your speaking engagements, I did not do any public speaking at all for almost 2 years, almost 3 years, I think. And that was a challenge coming back to public speaking. So whereas I didn't used to have to prepare that much, I found that, it was a while ago. I have to get back into the saddle and kind of like get back into the flow of it. So preparation and doing it very carefully and intentfully from the get-go as soon as you get your speaking engagement, I think is the easiest part, especially if you have nerves. I always have nerves. They become less over time with practice. But again, it's a fresh competency that you kind of like need to maintain. And for myself, I think the one thing that I've learned, the guidance that I need to follow specifically is that I speak very fast. My brain is going very, very quickly. And I in everyday life, I speak as I think often. So I know that I have to pace myself and be a little bit more intentful and articulate when I try to make a point. And then, of course, I have a lot of body language, so minding that a little bit. But at the same time, it depends culturally where you are in the world. If you're in the US and speaking and standing straight as a stick and not moving at all and not moving your hands, that is probably interpreted as a very stiff performance in terms of presentation. So letting that shine through in the US and maybe dial it a little bit back down in Sweden.
Yeah. Oh, okay, you can't use your hands as much in Sweden.
Well, you can, but it's have to do it with intent.
Oh, I see. Okay. I think it's normal to be nervous, and I think it's good to be nervous. I think it doesn't matter what you're doing, if you're not nervous, I believe you don't really care, because if it matters to you, even if you've done it a million times, you'll feel a little bit of something. And one of my directors fairly recently said to me that when you're giving talks and doing public speaking, your brain is behaving as if like you're about to be hit by a car. So you have to basically, whilst your brain is thinking that, still speak completely normally. And it feels weird to articulate or speak more slowly because it just feels so unnatural. But actually, when you hear it back, it sounds very normal. Whereas, when you feel you're speaking normally, it's then super fast. So that makes sense to me.
But it was also one tip that helped me greatly. It was my first time presenting for 300 people.
Okay.
And that was the scariest moment of my life.
Yeah.
When I had to get up on that stage. And it wasn't an auditorium, so it was like tiered seating and everybody was just looming over me in the room. And I had gone into the room prior to, and I was just, what am I going to do? And it's just a sheer amount of people. It's just a number. You don't really care when you're on stage, whether it's 100 or 300. You really don't. But it's the number, knowing the number before you go on stage is terrifying the first time. And I was lucky to have a coach, a communications coach that helped us from a corporate perspective with corporate communication. And she was like, okay, do this. Stand in front of the mirror, go to the bathroom before you go on stage. And then you're going to feel so stupid doing this. But stand in front of the mirror and strike a superhero pose. And just stand in it for 10 seconds, 20 seconds. And you're going to feel so stupid, but you're going to feel better. I did it, and I did feel better. There was data on this. There was actually a scientific thing on this that got debunked afterwards. But it got debunked.
Oh.
But if it works for you as a
it doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter. So find your superhero pose. Find something that settles you a little bit before you go on stage. Even if you feel super silly doing it. That helps, for sure.
I'm very surprised it was debunked, because I was going to say, oh yeah, I've heard this, like study, like proven thing. You do the superhero pose, makes you feel good. Okay, interesting. Yeah. But it's, again, if you think something's going to make you feel better, then normally it does. So chicken egg situation.
Yes.
All right. If you had a magic wand,
Hmm.
I'm sure everyone would like to have one of these in the gaming industry. What is one thing that you would change or you would improve about the industry? So I'm not asking you specifically about your job or the company that you work for, just in general. If there were no limitations whatsoever, what's something that you would change and why?
Everybody loves some fairy dust. No, I think one of the things, I mean, there's so many, but I think one of the things as a head of a publishing house, reviewing pitches, telling a lot of the developers no, because we have to from a commercial perspective. Sometimes us coming in as a publisher isn't helpful for the developer. It doesn't make financial sense where the developer could basically go out to a consultant and get the help that they need and save money. I don't want to ruin anybody's P&L. I want developers to have food on the table. That's my ultimate goal. They should be the successful one. If I can help take them there, then absolutely. But that also means that I have to say no to a lot of creative projects that I love. I look at so many pitches throughout a year. It's maybe 10 darlings that I have to kill and say no to, not kill, but say no to, that I can't help them purely because of a commercial situation that we're in and the market is in right now. And it hurts my soul because game dev is creative. It's this perfect junction between tech, very super heavy tech, and very creative. And I don't mean, the art that you see in the games. I talk about all of the concept arts that gets created, all of the music that gets composed for a game. It's a super creative industry. So the visibility problem that we have right now, the more games we put out on market, the more difficult it is to find your niche, to find that one thing that you would really enjoy. Even if it's $5, $10, just finding that gem that deserves to be made is really, really challenging today. And it's easy for people to say, just make the game good and it will sell. That is furthest from the truth today. You can be lucky and get the attention that you need, and you can have something so unique that you will automatically be put in front of the right people. It may happen, but not to the extent that it used to. So my magic wand would definitely be just solving the visibility problem and to enable really creative project that deserves to be made and actually have an audience and have a financial backing so that they can get it made.
It's sort of a bit of a bonus question now, just based on what you said, because, for example, there's some, I'm not going to name them, but there's some like very big games in the world that earn billions of dollars that I would never touch with a barge pole. Like, it's not my thing, right? But there might be a small indie game that has a very small development studio. And sometimes, like in the case of like Stardew Valley, one dude made a game and it was amazing and it blew up, right? So as a marketeer, how do you make that judgment? Because yes, you need to believe that the game can sell. Obviously, that's what you're there to do as a marketeer. But how do you make that decision of like, okay, well, this is not going to earn billions, but actually there's like 100,000 Melanies that would really like this game and would spend money on this game. How do you make that call?
It's really hard.
Yeah.
It's really hard. And it sometimes keeps me sleepless at night because it's not only as a marketeer. Again, I run a publishing house, so I can make real decisions in terms of, do we finance this game or not? And then comes the business side. But sometimes you can look at a title and go, ooh, this is something. This really has something from a marketing perspective. It has a soul, something that I can kind of like almost touch, but I can't quite place what it is. And then your job is basically to go out and compare. You have to comp it out. You have to look at similar games because you have to construct a business case from that feeling, that gut feeling that this is really, it could be fantastic. Maybe it's missing this little small thing that we can help with. But then you have to build a case for it and you have to build a business case for it. And that's the hardest part of it. And that's the hardest part for developers to sometimes accept as well when we go back and say, it's like, hey, this is our P&L. This is for all transparency, these are our numbers and this is what it looks like. And this is what it would look like with us in the pipeline or with us without it if you create it yourself or find other means to have grants. Or, I mean, in other countries than Sweden, there's good potential to receive grants for creative industries. And that is one of the hardest things, that you have to say no, even if that gut feeling is like, but sometimes I talk to developers and go like, no, you have to go and you have to go alone. Or I want your game and this is how we can help you. If you feel that that is a good fit for you, it's a long-term relationship as a publisher and a developer. You're basically working together for 3, 6, 10 years. If you feel that this is a good offer for you and you can work under these kind of like parameters that we set up, let's go. Let's do it.
Okay. And that must be a nice feeling. That must be exciting.
It is. It really is. And it's exciting when it clicks, when you can really find, I mean, sometimes you do a lot of business over camera today. We still try to do it the traditional way of still meeting developers face to face at least once before we sign them. But sometimes it takes a while until you get to know each other. But when you have that click in with the team and you just jive, that's when we do our absolute best work. So I usually tell developers, it's not like I have all the power. Yes, I sit on a sack of money, but you have the power to decide who you want to work with, because it is a long-term kind of like relationship. And one of the more common questions that I see from especially indie developers who are about to sign their first publishing contract, maybe they're courted by 5 different publishers. Who should I pick? Well, if 3 of them are equal and you can consider working with all of them, take them to dinner. Ask them to take you to dinner. Who do you actually have the best flow of communication with? When things get tough, because they will at some point in your relationship, who do you feel will be able to work that out with you and try to move forward in a forwarding way? That person that your gut is telling you, that person, I like it. Good. Go with that one.
That's really valuable. That's really good, because I think a lot of people just go to the business meeting or the investor meeting.
Yeah.
So no, that's really good. Okay. Moving on to where you're working now, we do have a little hint on the table, but what is, not your t-shirt, what is some exciting things happening at Beyond Frames?
So right now we're gearing up for Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles Empire City, which is launching next year. We haven't announced the date yet, but both myself and my entire team is working really hard to get that done. It's a super exciting project, and it's the first time you get to be a turtle in the history of games.
Yeah.
They're usually in third person. Now you're in first person, and you're fully embodying a turtle. So you will be one of the brothers, and you get to choose which version of turtles you want to play, basically, because there's a lot of turtles in the universe since the 80s or early 90s. So we're trying to do our take of it, but then at the end, you're the turtle, so you get to choose who to be. So that is super exciting.
Very exciting. Okay. How would you describe your leadership style? Because you've been chief marketing officer, you've been a COO, you've been head of operations. So I imagine maybe it has changed, maybe it stayed the same, but how would you... And I don't necessarily mean that, I said this in a previous interview, you don't have to name it like servant leadership. It doesn't have to have a title, but how do you feel? Like, what is your leadership style?
I think my employees can answer that better because they're on the receiving end of my leadership style. But what I try to do is to make sure that everybody have the tools, the competencies, and the everything set for them to do their jobs. I think it's freedom under responsibility to the largest degree. Now, COVID and remote work is a challenging time, but we're officially hybrid. But I don't care where you are in the world as long as the job gets done. I don't care at what time. But it's one of the more challenging parts of making sure that everybody stays in communication. I think that's the one of the big nuts to crack in remote work, to make sure that everybody's aligned on the daily basis. But that's what I try to do. Sometimes it's hard for me, even though I have kind of like a goal of how I want it to see. I perceive, I have a vision of how I want to project as a leader. But in small companies, especially like this one, I am also part of the production pipeline. So I also plug in on tasks every day. I'm a very much an operational, hands-on person because we're basically 5 people.
Yeah.
And I do have some experts and I try to let them do their jobs, but I also plug into a lot of different things. So I don't have the luxury right now of just being in a leadership role to manage people, but I have to manage people and the daily work as well, and actually plug into it. So sometimes I think my team think that, yeah, you try to be hands-off, but then sometimes you're really not, because I'm also the ultimate stakeholder when it comes to product quality, product ownership. So we try to balance it, and I try to do it with communication as the primary tool of, I'm not knocking you down when I say that this stroke line is such and such. It's more for visibility for the marketing campaign. If we put it on social media, it needs to be able to read. That's my only concern. What do you think about that? Can we get it adjusted, for example? So I think freedom and responsibility is kind of like my mantra, but then
I would love to ask a follow-up question about remote versus on-site, but I feel like that's a whole separate thing. I mean, we'll be here for the next hour. But it's also I work fully remotely now that I had moved to Stockholm, so it's also a bit of a dangerous question. So we'll leave it for another time. My final question for you, because this is called Game Changers, is what is a specific moment in your career that was a game changer for you? Either something that was a realization about the roles you were doing or the way that you were working, or like you define it, but something that for you was a game changer.
Well, you don't die when presenting for 300 people. That was one of the kind of like, it's like, it's okay. You can do it. I think sometimes, because the games industry, and I say this only because the games industry is kind of like in a shake-up moment right now. We're all feeling the pains of the games industry completing a little bit after COVID. Basically, we had a couple of good years with COVID, and now because many reasons things are changing, and we have a lot of people being let go. We have people studios downsizing. We have studios actually closing. And I think one of the pivotal moments I've had, and I've actually been in the situation almost 3 times now, 2 times more specifically, but almost 3 times, where it's been extremely shaky in the company. There's been a lot going on. There's been moments where everyone with a sane brain would have said, maybe it's time to move on. Maybe this is not where I want to stay. I think now I can say, after having had many kind of like shaky moments in my career, is to stay and work it out, if it makes sense. Even if the ultimate ending is a catastrophe where you have to close down the studio. My pivotal moments have been staying to try to help to clean up and try to make the best of the situation. And it's been so hard to put yourself in that situation, to make a choice to stay, because you do make a choice every time you make a conscious choice to stay. And you do it several times over the period of whatever hardship you're going through. You kind of like reassess, should I just throw in the towel now? Every time I've stayed, I've been very happy, and I have stayed for all of those times. I've been happy that I have done it, because it is an extremely valuable experience, even if it's hard, even if it's stressful, even if your own health sometimes takes a beating out of it. It has been a learning experience, and sometimes it takes years to realize that, yes, it was worth it, but I have been so far. So it's been some of the lessons that I've learned.
Resilience is a key skill. Before we wrap up, yes, I imagine you don't have loads of spare time, but are you playing any games at the minute? Or have you got your eyes on any games?
Yes, I just actually completed 165 hours in Hades 2.
Oof.
I've been through the early access since just after Christmas.
Okay.
I got a Steam Deck, which is the best thing I've ever
Really?
gotten.
I feel a kind of ways about it.
But the problem is that I work in games. I live games. I breathe games. More than 9 hours a day, usually.
Yeah.
I assess games. I play games every day. I had a moment last year where I was asking myself, am I even a gamer anymore? Is this just a profession for me now?
Right.
Because I can't get my behind in a sofa and sit there and play for hours again. I can't play at my desk. I love playing PC games, but I can't sit at my desk after having put 8, 9, 10
You've already
hours.
sat at your desk for a long time.
And assessed a lot of games. And then I was like, well, they have refurbished Steam Decks available right now. And it's kind of like, okay, it's not cheap, but it's, I mean, I can reasonably get into it. I can probably get it sold if I don't like it, rather than collecting dust on my shelf. So maybe I'll buy myself a Christmas gift and see, do I still have it? And I found Hades 1 because I hadn't got into it fully. I've assessed it, I played it through, but I didn't play it start to finish. Mm-hmm. So on the Steam Deck, that was my Christmas. It was basically 95 hours in Hades. And then I just realized that Hades 2 actually had come out in early access. So I put the Steam Deck down for a bit, and then I went back into it February maybe. So I played it in early access now, and they just had their full launch. Speaking of indie devs who make fantastic games, it's such a treat from every perspective. And I've been working so hard throughout the many hours that I've played now to like turn the work brain off, and it's like I really just want to enjoy this as a gamer, and I've succeeded almost all the way. Just before the full launch, I was like, okay, work brain on, and then I started assessing it, and I was like, oh, it's beautiful, and the craft, and the audio, and the spatialness, and the little small things. It's a piece of art, even though roguelites and kind of like fighting games of that combat games of that nature isn't your thing. They actually make the narrative the kind of like baseline of the entire story, and it drives you through 160 hours. I never thought that I would play 160. I mean, I play God of War and a lot of other games, but I find that I can't complete them any longer. But for this one, I definitely did. And I just completed all of the achievements last night. It's the first time in 20 years.
Congratulations.
That I had a full
That is an achievement. I also struggled with God of War, slightly different reasons. I got a bit stressed out with one of the boss scenes. And I was just, it took 3 months to gather the emotional strength to get through that one scene. The reason why I feel kind of ways about Steam Deck is I'm a bit of a purist, because I'm like, well, if it's going to be a PC game, then I play it on the PC. And then if it's going to be, like, I have Switch. That's the now like console if I'm not then playing my PS5 on the TV. But no, you make a really good point. But thank you so much for doing this. It's been lovely. Like we talk a lot, but it was nice to actually have like a bit more of a deep dive on your career and stuff. So thank you so much for joining us. Really appreciate it. And thank you also to you guys for listening and watching. I hope you join us again next time. Ciao.